Okay, guys, first of all, I hope you're having a great day so far. Welcome to another day of online learning. Now, today, what I'm going to do is talk to you about different types of business structures so that we're kind of in the entrepreneurship unit and talking about what it means to start a business and everything else. And so, the first thing you really have to understand are what are the different types of business structures. And there are three main types that you'll need to know. There's actually a few more outside of this, but they all kind of build on these three. Okay, so if you understand these three, then that's a good start for you to where if one day you do want to start your own business, then you'll kind of have a basic understanding of what type of business you should start because there's different advantages and disadvantages to each. So by starting your business in this way, you can be prepared and be ready to make as much money as possible and everything else. All right. Now, basically, and what I want you to do while we go through this PowerPoint is I want you to write down the advantages and disadvantages of each type of business structure, which we'll talk about here. So that's it. So everything else you can just kind of listen as I talk through it. So a business organization is basically how someone structures their private business. Okay, there's three main types that we'll talk about today. So there's sole proprietorships, corporations, and partnerships. And what you can see is here you have the number in existence. So there's actually the largest percentage of businesses that exist are sole proprietorships. Then you have almost 20% corporations and partnerships is 7%. But you'll see that the amount of sales that each thing makes up, corporations make up a vast majority of sales. So corporations are large companies, and we'll talk more about that here in a second, but they tend to be those large companies that we buy stuff from. So, think Apple, Google, right? Those are large corporations, Amazon, things like that. So, anyway, so we'll start off with sole proprietorship. So sole proprietorship is a business that is owned and run by a single person where there is no distinction between the owner and the entity. So essentially the owner operates it. They might have one or two employees. They could have a few more. Typically they don't for a variety of legal reasons. But basically the owner is the one that's calling the shots, running the business, making all the decisions. And then conversely, what's nice about that is that all the profits become the income for the sole proprietor for the business. So, examples of smaller sole proprietorships, if you cut lawns in the summer, our private lesson music teacher, babysitter, maybe, there's all sorts of different things that you can be as a sole proprietor. So that is kind of what that is. So there are a few strengths for being a sole proprietor. So first of all of the profits you make stay with you. That counts as your income for your taxes. It's very easy to start up a sole proprietorship. You basically see a need and you start working, right? If you see a bunch of people with lawns that need to be cut in your neighborhood and you want to do that, you can just go knock on their door and start cutting grass, right? You are the boss, quickest decisions, right? You get to figure that out. There are less taxes also in some respects with the sole proprietor because you don't have to set up a separate corporation and things like that. And then if you decide that it's not for you, you can just shut down pretty easily. All right. Now, there are some weaknesses with being a sole proprietor. So, first of all, you have unlimited liability, which means that you as a business owner are personally and fully responsible for all losses and debts of the business. So if you go start up a business and you need a loan or anything like that, let's keep using the grass cutting example. Let's say you take out some debt to buy lawn cutting equipment and things like that. If your business fails, you still owe that money, right? It doesn't disappear with the business. There's also limited life with the business. So the business ends with the death or resignation of the owner. So once the owner goes away, that business pretty much ceases to operate unless someone else wants to take over some of the clients or the things that they've built up. But it's not as easily sold as a large corporation. There's also not as much access to additional capital. So if you do take out a loan, it's you personally signing for that loan. It's not the business is able to get a loan on itself, okay? The business is run by the owner, which can be a strength and can also be a weakness, right? If you are not a very good business owner, then that can help your business not do as well. Now, the next thing that we're going to talk about is a partnership. Partnerships are essentially sole proprietorships, just with more people owning and operating. There's two main types of partnerships you can have. The first is a limited liability partnership, where the owners are not, or one or more owners are not fully liable or responsible if the company gets sued or anything like that. And then there's just a general partnership, which is essentially a sole proprietorship just with multiple different owners. Now, some strengths of a partnership. Essentially, everything that was a strength under sole proprietorship, except for the only additional thing is that there's more individuals, so that can help ease some tensions or help people maybe make better decisions, right? Because you have more people thinking about it and working on it, all with the goal of making money. Now, some weaknesses. Again, unlimited liability unless you have a limited partnership. Limited life, so the business, once a partner leaves, it doesn't exist. They have to reform as a new partnership. Partners may not get along. Okay, that's a big one, right? Think of any group project you've ever had to do for school or anything else, and you can understand how difficult that can be. Now, the last one that we're going to talk about is a corporation. A corporation essentially is where you set up the business to exist on its own, and then you have owners of the corporation who buy stock and different things like that. It has a separate existence from its owners. The corporation itself can buy and sell property, enter into contracts, and can be sued, which helps the owners because it limits the liability that they have. So if the company gets sued, the owners are not personally responsible, right? All that stays within the company and things like that. Now, some characteristics. So what they do is they issue stock or a number of shares where they sell it to people, and the money that they make from that sale is used to set up the company. Now, if it's one person who decides to turn their sole proprietorship into a corporation, they would essentially just, have them get all of the shares for that. Okay. Profits of the company get distributed to the owners through what are called dividends. It essentially is just a payment to shareholders. We talked about that when we talked about the stock market game. There's also common stock, may have preferred stockholders. That just gets into some detailed structure stuff, not as important, but just know that ownership is dictated by how much stock you own in the company. All right. Now, some strengths. So there is limited liability, which is good for the shareholders or the owners because they're not liable for the debts of the corporation. So if your corporation, now that it's its own entity, typically has more money involved, right? It can start taking out debt and things like that are not solely responsible by the owners, right? Now that'll take away from the profits that they make and other things like that. But the stockholders are not liable for any debts that they run up. So if the company fails, all the money has to come out of the corporation. There's unlimited life as well because the corporation exists outside of the owners. The owners might run it, but they will hire professionals to come in and help them work there, right? Most of you or your parents probably work for corporations where that exists, okay? There's also access to additional loans because they can take out money that way. And it's easy to transfer ownership. If someone wants out, they can just sell their shares to someone else. They might have to work a little harder to find someone if it's a different type of company, but they can generally find people willing to buy into that company. All right. Now, some weaknesses. It's expensive to develop a corporation. You have to pay taxes and fees and work through the city and things like that. There's also tax that you have to pay. So corporation pays tax on the profits it makes, and then it's the money that's then paid to owners gets taxed when it gets distributed as dividends. Okay. There's also a lot more government regulation of corporations, and there's also minimal owner input because once you set this up, you essentially want it to operate as best as it can, and so typically you'll hire what are called board of directors, where they kind of help make decisions for the company that helps it be as profitable as possible. Okay, so what I want you to do, like I said, is go in and fill in the advantages and disadvantages of each type of business structure. If you have to pause it, anything like that, rewind, go back and get that done. Submit it, turn it in. This will be graded. So anyway, I hope you have a great rest of your day.